Hey, what's going on guys, Khraze here and welcome back to another Outriders video. Today let's take a look at some of the most important things that I kinda wish I knew before playing this game, especially since many of these would have helped me a ton with a ton of the headaches that I had by playing on the higher difficulties, and even more so with the farming, especially once you get closer to level 30 and trying to push past world tier 10 and on the way to 15. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. By the way, you might notice that many of the shots that are present in this video have been played on and recorded on GeForce Now, which is a really amazing service. Also a huge shout out to Nvidia for sponsoring this video. So basically GeForce Now is a cloud gaming service from Nvidia that pretty much lets you play your own games, your library of games from pretty much anywhere, either on your PC, on a mobile phone, on a Mac, on a Chromebook, it doesn't really matter. Like even Outriders is right now available on that, and I've been playing it quite a bit when I was not at home and had access to my powerful PC. More on that later in the video, but I do want to talk about one of the first things that you should probably avoid doing if you started already, and that is finishing historian quests. Now I know it might be tempting at first to finish everything along with the main campaign, especially since this one also has a complete challenge track of about 10 or so missions that eventually will give you a pretty nice reward on top of the ones that you get on the way, but I suggest to hold off because we can farm the bosses inside of it. So there's two main advantages of these quests, or well, three. First of all, they're quick missions, they usually involve only one area, and they also spawn that boss among some other ads as well. Second of all, the drops from the boss can totally scale up to your level, which means they might be better suited to be kept towards level 20 plus or even level 30. And finally, and the most important, if you complete these, they are pretty much gone and cannot be repeated, unlike other side missions. So that's why I told you, hold these off for level 25 plus, maybe even level 30, and only farm them then. Once you reach that point, it's super easy. You just have to take down a few ads, make the boss spawn, take down the boss, which has a very good chance at dropping more than a handful of items, which again can scale up to your level, and then, as the Captain Farm was in the demo, let yourself die and repeat the process over and over again. Once you respawn, you can even leave the area and come back later and keep this as a really awesome farming method towards the end game. Moving on to number two, another thing that I wish I knew earlier was the fact that changing mods on your gear and weapons is so inexpensive, it's not worth it to not use it even on gear that you're about to like change or replace in just a few more levels. So just to give you an example, here is me with pretty much full epic gear at some point in the story, I believe around level 20 plus, so it's extremely inexpensive to change even the mods on epic gear. Like it costs a little bit over like 100 of these leather scraps to change one of these mods, and as you can see I have over 16,000 of these without doing any farming specifically for that. The same goes with the weapon. In that case it costs iron, but even in that case we have thousands of these at our disposal, and it only costs a bit over 100 for epic gear to change all of this. And trust me, you're going to want to min-max and fine-tune your builds even as you're leveling up, as you're going to see a huge increase in difficulty as you're progressing through the world tiers. This brings us to number 3 on the list, which is also in regards to crafting, which has a ton of uses in the game. And the second one, also something that I should have done way earlier in the game, is to swap weapon variants. So any weapon that you get in the game, especially as it has higher rarity, will be able to spawn with at least a couple of variants. Like for example, in the case of assault rifles, they can be semi-auto, full auto, or well, in this case there's a tactical version that I got on this specific epic. Now in this case I really hated the tactical variant of the assault rifle, and I never knew how inexpensive it is to just change that really quickly again at the crafting vendor and put it up, for example, on full auto, which made it way more powerful and way more suited for the combat scenarios I was into. And by the way, again, it only costs a little bit over or under 100 of those iron bars, so definitely worth it and something you should keep an eye out for. By the way, if you didn't know about this, you basically unlock this new NPC with the crafting essentially after the second level is completed. So once you do that, you're going to see that prompt on the screen and you're going to be able to access this at any point from any of your camps, so definitely go ahead and do so right now. Moving on to number 4, this doesn't mean that everything in the crafting menu is going to be inexpensive. In fact, changing rarity, increasing stats, or upgrading an item is going to have an exponentially higher cost, and it's something that you're going to do in limited amounts, especially the earlier you are in the game, which is why my next recommendation is to gather everything, even if you're not going to use it even for a split second. And this includes, yes, those greens that drop all the time in the early stages. Reason being is that you have a couple of really awesome options. First of all, you can either just scrap them and get all of those leather and iron parts that you can further use in crafting, and second of all, if you don't want to do that, you can just sell them at a really nice scrap cost to maybe afford something from a different vendor that might further help you with your build, either as you level up or once you reach the end game. For that reason, I also recommend that every time you are inside a cave to mine all of the nodes, especially as you progress through the stages. You're going to notice that even one of these nodes can give you hundreds of metal or really precious mats that can be used later on in changing qualities and so on and so forth. Moving on to number 5, since we are on the subject of vendors, the first 2 vendors that you encounter in Rift Town are really trash and barely sell anything over rare quality, even if you like wait a ton of time. Well, what if I told you that just a little bit later in the main campaign you will encounter way better vendors that you don't have to worry too much about, and they're going to give you epics right off the gate. So at one point, about like 2 or 3 hours into the main campaign, you will reach your second big town, which is going to be the Trench Town, and here is where you will get access to 2 amazing vendors, one for the armor and one for the weapons. Now the weapons vendor is going to be in the town, so you have to go over there and meet him, but it's pretty easy to spot since he is going to be on the main road. And as I've said, it doesn't just provide you with one of these epics, it actually gives you access all the way up to 6, because you don't just have one item of the day, you also have those VIP items over there on the second slot. So yes, they cost quite a bit, which is why I recommended to collect all resources up until this point, so you can sell them and maybe afford your very first epic right here once you reach the new town. So definitely worth it. And meanwhile, in your camp you can find a similar one but for your armor in the same town, and this one is going to give you the same amount of access to epics, but in this case it's going to be all about armors. Oh, and by the way, these vendors will last you quite a bit of time. I've passed that point like a long time ago, and they're still the best vendors that I have available in terms of epics. Moving on to number 6, another thing that I wish I knew before completing them is the wanted posters and the monster hunting, which are a couple of other side activities that are one-time events only. So there's going to be like 10 of these for each of the sides in total in the entire game on all of the maps. And yeah, if you complete these, they are going to be a one-time event, so you can't repeat them and whatnot. But as I've said in the previous video, these are some of the best missions in the game, as they guarantee at least an epic quality reward, both as a drop, so you can get multiple chances at multiple epics dropping from the bosses you defeat in these missions, as well as from giving in these missions, especially the monster hunts, which is why I fully recommend to maybe not complete these until you're at least level 30. It would be a shame to not hold these off for the end game, since these are going to give you a quick access to some additional and awesome loot that you can use at that stage to further push into the higher difficulties. So that's why I recommend to at least skip on the majority of these and maybe only complete like a handful of them at most if you want to see what they're all about. But this brings us to the final recommendation on the list, and that is to not rush anything, and especially so, don't try to do everything at once. Just have fun in your journeys with the main campaign and whatnot. There's plenty of main campaign content, and even more so, even the side missions on top, to last you way past level 30. Like right now, what I'm doing is I'm simply playing that main campaign, doing a few side missions every now and then, and that is more than plentiful in terms of XP and getting really cool stuff on top as well. Like remember, there's 40 hours to beat the main campaign, which is gonna last you plenty enough to do so. And yeah, as I've said, I've been using GeForce Now to play quite a big part of Outriders up until this point, especially since I wasn't home for a couple of days. So it's super helpful because you can just link your Steam, your Uplay, EGS or GOG.com and just like play either on your PC, on your Chromebook, even on your Android mobile phone. By the way, you can use GeForce Now and play the game in case you're not at home. Now, if you choose to use it, there's also a free account that you can play, but it's limited to 1 hour sessions. Meanwhile, if you go with the priority one, yes, this is going to cost you $9.99 per month, but you get so many other benefits, including like 1080p 60 FPS sessions. You also get to play on the highest possible high-end machines, which also means you can benefit from that RTX on in games that support it. And for example, in Outriders, you can pretty much play everything maxed out as long as you have the proper download rate to support the streaming from Nvidia's, of course, servers. This isn't just limited to Outriders, by the way. You also get to play games like Cyberpunk or Watch Dogs Legion or Control, which is really amazing, by the way, and you can do so with both ray tracing on and DLSS on, and you don't have to worry that your PC is not powerful enough. You don't have to spend like thousands and thousands of dollars on hardware to be able to play every new game that comes out. Just pay that $9.99 a month for a premium account instead, and you can play on the highest available end game hardware that Nvidia has to offer using cloud gaming, which is of course really awesome. So again, definitely check them out. I'm gonna put some links down below that you can follow. As always, let me know down below what other thing on the list did you want to know earlier but didn't until it was too late. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.